Major political news on the campaign trail with a star-studded fundraising event over the weekend for President Joe Biden right here in L.A. We have new polls out that show former President Donald Trump making inroads with black voters. And we have more bombshells out of the Supreme Court expected this week. Who knows, as tensions heat up in hot spots overseas and across the world. Joining us to discuss all of this is Mo Kelly, host of Later with Mo Kelly on KFI AM 640. Thank you for coming in. Happy Monday morning to you.
Happy Monday morning. Thank you for having me.
So what a fundraiser. I mean, star-packed, Obama joining, you had Jimmy Kimmel on stage, right? But Biden focused in the star-studded event on, Trump, not his own policy achievements. And there are some pundits this morning say that was a mistake. Do you agree?
I don't know if it was a mistake, if only because you have a $30 million haul, you're
right.
doing something right. That means you're unifying at least your donor base. Now, lately, President Biden has been more pointed in his attacks, and I think that foreshadows what we may see at the debate, where you're going to see less of Mr. Nice Guy in President Joe Biden and actually go after Donald Trump, which is a calculated decision.
Well, Biden is coming out with these new attack ads against Trump's character and the fact that he is a convict. Do these break through? Do you think this changes the narrative at all?
I don't know if it changes the narrative, but we're talking about people on the margins in the sense of these independent voters, these moderate voters who might be open to the suggestion that Donald Trump is not the person that he says that he is. And also, you're looking at two people, let's be honest, both sides of the coin are unsure of the stability of these candidates, whether they will be fine all the way through the election into the next 4 years. So this is something which is going to be very important and scrutinized.
Well, obviously, Biden's bringing out the big guns. He brought out the very popular Barack Obama, and he basically amplified the achievements of President Biden's tenure. But it appears, according to polls, that Biden is losing his historic stalwart, voter base in black voters, 50 and above by a slight margin, but 50 below by a lot. Why?
I think that as an African-American man, I can say that African-Americans have grown disenchanted, feeling disenfranchised, taken for granted by the Democratic Party. It may not be specific to Joe Biden, but since he is the titular head of the party, it's going to be reflected in that. Now, also, he has a problem, and I say it's a good problem, it's a problem being the incumbent. He has to run on his record. And as far as African-Americans are concerned, I'm speaking to you on Juneteenth, but it's not necessarily something which is going to galvanize or animate African-American voters.
But, Mo, are these polls even accurate? I've heard some pundits say, look, just like Republicans will come home to Trump, the black vote will come back to the Democrats because of the kind of the racist rhetoric that has been growing on the right. So do you think these polls are accurate?
I don't know if they're accurate, but they are a snapshot at this moment. And yes, most likely most African-Americans will come home, if you will, to the Democratic Party. But the Republicans are playing the game about just getting a percentage point here or there. Remember, Georgia was decided by some 11,000 votes. These are small margins which are going to decide key states. You talk about black voters, the Mecca of Atlanta, it plays very large, Milwaukee and Wisconsin. If you can swing a couple percentage points, Donald Trump in those states, you could change the election.
But it's all about turnout. And right now, there's so many black and brown voters that don't turn out, and they could make the election. What's going to get them to come out?
Well, that's
two unpopular candidates.
That's right. If they don't come out, not that that's voter suppression, but voter indifference does definitely help Republicans up and down the ticket.
What do you make of this argument? There are pundits that say Trump is not really expecting to build a black voter base. What he's really trying to do is appeal to moderate whites.
Both can be true. He's not, I'll say, putting forth a campaign which is going to encourage or entice black voters by and large. But again, if he gets a 1 or 2% there and also keeps his base and lets Republicans who are okay with that, my word, racist rhetoric, then yes, he'll put himself in a better place than he was 4 months ago.
Right. And we have a new poll out that shows that the third party candidate is really doing pretty darn well at 8% right now, RFK Jr. Who does that hurt more, Trump or Biden?
I don't know who it hurts more, but it seems like if people are paying attention to the rhetoric, he sounds more like Donald Trump and would pull from Donald Trump. People historically have known him as a Democrat. Also, the name of Kennedy carries Democratic weight, but he doesn't sound like a Democrat. So that's the I'll say $64,000 question. We don't know who they pull from, but I don't think it helps either candidate.
What did you make of, obviously, former President Trump returning to the Hill, what the Democrats and pundits call returning to the scene of the crime, and Mitch McConnell, who once, rebuked him, held held morally responsible for January 6th, shakes his hand, what some pundits call this ritualization of humiliation. What do you make of it?
Yeah, the fealty I don't quite understand, especially from Mitch McConnell, because we both know he's not running again. He's not going to be the Senate majority or minority leader. Depends on how it plays out. I don't know what Mitch McConnell himself gets for it, but the other Republicans have made that calculation that if they go against President Trump, they're going to be primaried or they're going to have some sort of loss as far as campaign funds. There's nothing good for any of the Republicans if they don't at least appear that they support him.
Did you read what Liz Cheney came out and said? Obviously, lots of resentment there, but she basically said this was just, a display of, horribleness and hypocrisy. And she blames Mitch McConnell more than anyone for allowing Trump to get to this moment.
Well, we remember what Mitch McConnell said after January 6th. He was unambiguous. He was clear in the condemnation and also pointing the finger at former President Donald Trump. For him to make that 180-degree turn, I'm quite sure is curious to Liz Cheney, but also Liz Cheney, former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, understands the political calculations which are being made.
All right, we have a big debate coming on the 27th. I think it's 10 days away. Everybody's at the edge of their seat to see how these guys will do. What do they each need to do to kind of break through to the other side?
I don't know if they can break through to the other side, but they can do something to help themselves. Hurt themselves individually. A poor Biden showing would have disastrous consequences on his coalition and constituency. A disastrous showing by Donald Trump could remind people of what they disliked about him in 2016 leading through 2020.
Well, there seems to be both sides agreeing to rules that they haven't in the past. Yeah. They're agreeing to have the moderators put the mute button on the mic, which cuts people off at time. And there's no audience, which plays to Trump's strengths. What do you think?
I don't know that no audience plays to Trump's strengths, if only because you won't have the people who are egging and urging him on. You won't have those applause lines. And we know it's not going to be a competition of ideas. And we're going to have a long-form look at how these candidates can fare off the top of their head extemporaneously and see who seems like more serious about becoming the next president.
All right, I do want to ask you about the very unpopular Supreme Court for many in this country. They upheld this ban on the bump stocks after a weekend of several mass shootings. And some say this is their attempt to rewrite in the long term the Second Amendment.
Yeah, there is some legislation from the bench or, adjudicating from the bench. We see that there are personal politics seeping into our Supreme Court. But as far as popularity goes, I would disagree with you. If only historically, the Supreme Court, and maybe it's amplified now, has never necessarily been popular with a lot of decisions. We go back to the Civil Rights Movement. Those decisions were not nationally popular, but they ruled, in my eye, during with respect to the law. Now it seems like they're ruling with respect to personal ideology.
And even religion, no?
Yes, that's inclusive of that.
Yeah, okay. We have other big case coming down the pike we expect this week on immunity and the January 6th rioters. What are you expecting to happen there?
I think they're going to continue to slow walk it or give a very narrow interpretation of the law as far as presidential immunity, where a president could be found guilty or charged with certain things, but they'll probably spread it out where it won't have any impact on this election.
We've had more allegations come out on Clarence Thomas not reporting these fancy trips by Harlan Crow. And you have, obviously Alito flying the upside down flag. Chief Justice Roberts not doing anything about it, saying, I'm out. Is he morally obligated to step in and do something here?
I can't speak for whether he's morally obligated, but in terms of the Supreme Court, he's not obligated to do anything. They're not even willing to adopt a code of ethics. There are no penalties. There are no consequences. So there's no reason for anyone with a vested interest in the direction of the court to do anything differently.
I have to ask you overseas because it does impact our domestic politics and certainly this election. Netanyahu disbanding his war cabinet after Benny Gantz, left last week. What do you make of this? Where does that put us? And where does it put Biden?
Well, it puts President Biden, let me answer the second question first. It puts President Biden in a very difficult position because his coalition and constituents we've been talking about are looking to him to show leadership on Gaza, ending that war if at all possible, but he doesn't have the possibility, he doesn't have the capability of doing that. As far as Benjamin Netanyahu, he's trying to remain in power, and until someone can oppose him, he's going to remain in power.
Have you ever seen a run-up to an election or a political climate like this? I mean, in decades.
No, I don't think anyone has, and that's inclusive of 1968.
Well, that's saying something. Oh, Mo Kelly, listen, I so appreciate you coming in, weighing in on all these hefty issues. We could spend 10 hours here on everything that's going on in the headlines, but we appreciate you and hope you come back.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.